Hello, gentle listener, and welcome to another bit of my musings and wonderments from What's on My Mind. Recently, I watched the movie Maestro, Bradley Cooper's biopic of America's larger-than-life conductor Leonard Bernstein, his brilliant work, his complicated relationships, and his inner life. The movie has been praised for both its painstaking accuracy and artistic impressionism, tackling some controversial aspect of Bernstein's life and living life itself. With multiple awards and nominations, it does not need me to tell you that it is well worth viewing. For today, I want to comment on just one of my takeaways from the movie, specifically its reference to Bernstein's Candide. It is not the central event of the movie, but the reference to Make Our Garden Grow was a powerful connection for me and made sense to my own life's path. Bernstein's Candide has had its own ups and downs to live through on the way to becoming a classic. Certainly, the 1956 Candide was a flop, a not so optimistic beginning. But the 1973 version, 1989, and 99 revisions are the ones known today. My first encounter with Candide also was not so notable. I had only encountered it as a classroom reference or as a footnote, but it would become more significant in my adult life. During my years in France, I kept stumbling on the bizarre optimism of Voltaire in his original Candide, the base for Bernstein's Operetta. I discovered a surprising affinity to Voltaire and his characters. I referred to them 6 times in my second book, Le Petit Jardin de l'âme, which chronicled that period of my life. Voltaire's original 1759 novel, with a full title of Candide ou l'optimisme, was a witty argument against certain optimistic thinkers of the day who essentially believed that everything happened for a reason, usually linking that reason to divine reason. Voltaire wrote a story about a young man whose naive positivity gets him into a ton of trouble, but viewed every event, tragic as well as fortunate, as both right and good. Now fast forward to the mid-1950s and along comes Bernstein, an original libretto of Lillian Hellman and lyrics primarily by Richard Wilbur. Bernstein turns a philosophical novel about cultural indoctrination and the nature of optimism into a poignant yet comical musical. Make Our Garden Grow is sung in the finale of that musical when the main character, Candide, realizes that the only purpose of life is to cultivate his garden. An incredible journey has brought young lovers Candide and Cunigund from an idyllic Westphalian village to disaster at sea, a Spanish bordello, the ravages of war, and back again. In the context of the story, Candide's bubble of an imagined utopian future, as soon as the company has sung it into being, bursts. Make Our Garden Grow begins with, I've been a fool and so have you, and concludes with the entire cast singing a hymn to a rather pragmatic form of optimism. The soaring chorus seems to be telling us that growing our garden is a metaphor for the flowering of life itself. For the sake of clarity, I will read the lyrics here, but I encourage you to check the links in the description for some powerful vocals. Candide begins, Cunigund responds, and an ensemble like a Greek chorus concludes. No, we won't think noble thoughts because we're not noble. We won't live in beautiful harmony because there's no such thing in this world, nor should there be. We promise only to do our best and to live out our lives. Dear God, that's all we can promise in truth. Marry me, Cunigund. You've been a fool, and so have I, but come and be my wife, and let us try before we die to make some sense of life. We're neither pure, nor wise, nor good. We'll do the best we know. We'll build our house and chop our wood and make our garden grow. I thought the world was sugar cake, for so our master said, but now I'll teach my hands to bake our loaf of daily bread. We're neither pure, nor wise, nor good. We'll do the best we know. We'll build our house and chop our wood and make our garden grow. And make our garden grow. Let dreamers dream what worlds they please. Those Edens can't be found. The sweetest flowers, the fairest trees, are grown in solid ground. We're neither pure, nor wise, nor good. We'll do the best we know. We'll build our house and chop our wood and make our garden grow. I have had an evolution of this make our garden grow metaphor. Some of you know that little garden of the soul, Le Petit Jardin de l'âme, first described the bed and breakfast in France as a refuge of rural gentility and tranquility for our B&B guests. And those who have read my second book by the same name know that it also described the growth of a little church community in France. Both gardens grew, flourished in spite of local misadventures and their share of pestilences. During this time, I wrestled with two competing points of view. One seemed to be the optimistic choice, always to see the glass as half full rather than half empty. But I believed there had to be a point of view more full and complete. Not a point of view that sees the world as either or, but rather both and, existing side by side. At the time, I described it as realistic optimism. Linda thought me a pessimist, and I adopted the persona of benevolent curmudgeon. Even in the move to Panama, we envisioned cultivating a new garden, starting life over fresh. In this case, not only was our garden hewed from the rainforest hillside of Altos del Maria, but this was also to be a new season in our lives. We each were different because of our experiences, for better or worse, in France. And so our garden would grow differently. Now, as Linda and I take an unconventional approach to our 45-year relationship, we grow into a new season of living apart. But we continue to see Petit Jardin de l'âme as the chosen metaphor, even though we may have very different gardens in mind. Optimism is necessary for building new life and dreams in the real world of adversity and difficulties. In this current chapter of life, I see a nuance through the eyes of Bernstein's Make Our Garden Grow and the depiction of his life in Maestro. Both Leonard Bernstein and his wife, Felicia Montalegre, embody a very different optimism than to look at the world as an either-or proposition, It is more complex, confusing, controversial perhaps, and more complete. Make Our Garden Grow embodies that complexity. Optimism reimagined in Make Our Garden Grow is a practical necessity. More than simply a glass half empty or half full, optimism lives life, all of it, and sometimes takes us beyond the constraints of the conventional or convenient view. There is a character of an old woman in the original Candide. She asks, "I should like to know which is worse, to be ravaged 100 times by pirates, to have a buttock cut off and run the gauntlet of the Bulgarians, to be flogged and hanged in an auto-da-fe, to be dissected and to have to row in a galley. In short, to undergo all the miseries we have each of us suffered, or to simply sit here and do nothing." "That's a hard question," says Candide, only to conclude after several paragraphs of dialogue with his traveling companions, "We must cultivate our garden." I hope that you have found my musings and meanderings interesting, and perhaps it encourages you to see life in every season as a garden. Please take a listen to the recordings of Make Our Garden Grow to enjoy some of the musical and emotional depth that has been given us by Leonard Bernstein. In the description notes, I have included links to 3 versions for you. One is performed in the context of the operetta, a second in the context of a performance, and the third, a studio outtake sung as a solo by Barbra Streisand. She belts out that high note at the end for 20 seconds with power and panache. That says something about optimism in the face of impossibilities. Thanks for joining me in this YouTube adventure. Click subscribe below to be notified of future videos. Click thumbs up if you liked this one, and yes, let me know if you have a comment. "Cela est bien," répondit Candide, "mais il faut cultiver notre jardin." Goodbye for now, gentle listener.